Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, it's about time for us now to take you into our focus for today. The increasing spate of protests rocking some parts of the country over the rising prices of foodstuff and general cost of living in Nigeria, which has seemingly raised the middle class and plunged most Nigerians into hunger. Many Nigerians have been plunged into a financial crisis and increased their cost of living by continuous rise in inflammatory pressures being currently experienced in Nigeria. According to the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS), Nigeria's annual inflation rate rose to 29.90% in January from 28.92% in December 2023. Compared to 26.98% when the president declared the state of emergency on food security. Food inflation seemed to be no respecter of presidential declarations. And of course, joining us to have this conversation this morning is Mr. Taiwo Hassan. Good morning and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
All right, so before we delve into the business for today, before now we had a conversation. And I said something. I called someone in Computer Village just to get, a flash drive. And guess what the person said? Bros, wait, make I confirm within afternoon price be. Now, looking at the situation of things, what would you say as regards the protest that has been, and of course still going on in most part of the country, as it regards to the skyrocketing or the astronomical rise in the cost or prices of both goods and of course services?
Well, first thing I would say would be to applaud Nigerians who are already protesting across the country and to urge them not to relent but continue the protest, because the situation has gotten to a point where we can no more breathe. All of us now have to rise up as one and begin to make demands on the government, because this government has demonstrated over the past 9 months that it is not prepared to listen to the voice of reason. It is not prepared to listen to ordinary complaints. It is not interested, in listening to press statements or even the kind of conversation we're having right now. The only language it would understand will be the language of mass struggle, the language of protest, and the language of general strike and civil disobedience. And that is why it is very important that this independent initiative of different layers of the population across the country to protest this situation must continue. But also, most importantly, we need to also up the ante, because it is very obvious that scattered protest alone will not do it. We need to unify the movement across the country and ensure that we have a nationwide 1 day or 2 day action that can shut down the country and ensure that our message gets to where it should go to. And that is why the declaration of a 2-day national protest by the NLC, for Tuesday 27 and Wednesday 28 February, of this year, is very, very important. And we have to urge the NLC leadership and all of its affiliates to begin to mobilize and prepare for that. But we also understand from our experience that the leadership of the labor movement, particularly the NLC and the TUC, they have a penchant for suspending actions before it has made any real gain, especially on the eve, of those actions. And that has been done repeatedly over the years, and that always caused mobilization among the people. For instance, we need to say this, that in a way, the leadership of the trade unions have as much responsibility as President Tinubu for the crisis that we face today. Because if you remember, when on May 29, President Tinubu made that tragic pronouncement, of the suspension of or the removal, of a fuel subsidy. Few days after, the NLC declared a general strike, which was to commence on the 6th of June last year. But then, a few days to the commencement of the action, the NLC decided to suspend it without any real commitment by the Nigerian state to reverse that criminal policy. And even afterwards, every other attempt by the NSA and TUC to mobilize for action were equally punctuated, at the last minute. And where any action really took place, they were not really well mobilized for, so that they did not have so much impact. That has been the situation over the past 9 months, which gave the President Tinubu regime the confidence to continue to add up to the crisis that we face. So that very soon after May 29, when they declared subsidy removal, the same government moved ahead, to float the currency, which is a devaluation that has caused the current rapid run on the naira that we are facing today. And they made all kinds of other policy pronouncements, all of which are devastated our lives. And that's why I think that the leadership of the trade union movement must learn from that error. Because if they had gone ahead with the June 6th strike, there's every possibility that the regime would have realized that it is going to face the anger of the people if it tries to move ahead on these other policies. So the trade union movement has to learn from that and ensure that this action on 27 and 28 goes forward. Okay. I think that is an important message that needs to be sent to them right now.
That has been taken, but then let me also go deeper into some of your submission earlier. In your earlier submission, you said the situation obviously has gotten to a point where Nigerians can no longer breathe. Prior to May 29, before the inauguration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, he had always said, that let Nigerians breathe, which shows that he has empathy. But in your statement, you are saying that Nigerians have not been able to breathe or can no longer breathe as a result of the situation. Is there a contrast in the statement?
There's no contrast. For those who have known President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for decades, while he was not a president, while he was a senator, for instance, in the mid-90s, and when he became the governor of Lagos State in 1999 up to 2007, you would have clearly understood that Tinubu is a chameleon. He has studied and perfected the art of deception, so that what he says today is usually different from what he says tomorrow, depending on the circumstance. So, for instance, this same individual, was part of the movement against military rule in the mid-90s, and there were statements he made about the kind of Nigeria that he dreams of. That when you place it side by side with what he's doing now as president of the country, you'll be aghast if you do not know the type of person he is. There were statements he made between 2007 and up to 2015, before his party, formerly the ACN and APC, got power at the center, which when you place side by side with what he's doing today, you are also likely to be shocked. And there were statements he made during the rule of the APC for 8 years, during the campaign, which if you also place side by side, what is happening is that President Tinubu, just like most of the capitalist elites and politicians we have in this country, they see Nigerians as fools whose mind can be structured the way they want. So one day they are acting as if they are with the masses. The next day they are doing their real business, which is to pillage the resources of this country and to foist on us policies that will only ensure that a few people continue to be rich while the rest of us are wallowing in poverty. So when he said let the poor breathe, just before he came to power, it was a populist slogan to give the impression that he stands with the poor. But if you look at his policies over the past 9 months, we can't even breathe anymore. People are fainting, at public places because they have not eaten for days. And that for me, ought to be a chastening movement for all Nigerians, especially the working masses and the youth, whom have always struggled to fight for a better Nigeria. But oftentimes, they have always come under all kinds of illusions, sometimes thinking that there is any saint or messiah among the 40 thieves or the capitalist elite in Nigeria. So there was a period when the same Nigerian people and the Nigerian youth believed in Buhari because they thought that given his first stint as head of state and his so-called anti-corruption personnel, that is likely to resolve the contradictions facing the country. But today now, none of us, can think in that way anymore, because the 8 years of his administration led to collapse of the economy, led to mass poverty in the midst of plenty. But even on security, he could not fix it. The insecurity situation became even much more, serious and severe under his regime. And on corruption, you have seen that his regime is possibly one of the most corrupt over the last 2 decades. You had under him an Attorney General of the Federation, and it is something year-old man or thereabout, stealing over 120 billion naira under the administration of Buhari. And just recently, the President Tinubu's administration, the FCC, also just uncovered, revelation that perhaps the president's signature was forged to move out of the CBN huge amount of money and all of that. So that we can all safely conclude that today all of the illusions in Buhari that is not corrupt, is completely a lie. He presided over a completely corrupt regime, that equally made Nigeria poorer than they are. And that is where we are also today with Tinubu. So that Nigerians must learn that the struggle to save this country cannot be led by any of these elements. It is only we, the Nigerian people, the working people, the youth, who feels the pain that have to construct for ourselves a political organization and mass party that we can use to fight for political power and begin to run society by ourselves. None of these elements, not even Peter Obi, because we must make the point, in the last election, Peter Obi and Atiku also had on their campaign a manifesto, proposals for removal of a fuel subsidy and floating of the naira. So it means that if Tinubu had not won the last election, and either Atiku or Peter Obi had won, it would have been the same ballgame. They would have removed fuel subsidy. And obviously, we will all be in the same situation that we are in today.
So I was coming there. I just wanted you to learn. But then again, before I make progress into asking my question, I just want us to be guided as regards our utterances. You're okay and also well within your rights to express yourself, but let's also be guided because you mentioned the president being like a chameleon. Please, for the sake of those who are watching. Now, my question to you would be: you talked about the tragic pronouncement, which I know you're referring to the subsidy removal made by the president. And of course, you would agree with me that persons you've mentioned like a Peter Obi also mentioned, that if he gets into power, he's going to remove subsidy. Yeah. So what's different about Bola Ahmed Tinubu making a pronouncement that fuel subsidy is gone? Don't also forget that the last administration also made procurement for subsidy until after June. So beyond June, there will be no arrangement to cater to fuel subsidy. So what's different about Tinubu making a pronouncement and you calling it a tragic pronouncement?
Because he was the one who brought the thing to life.
He was the one who brought what?
Fuel subsidy removal, the complete removal of it. Even though, as you said, the immediate past administration had already drawn up a budget which gave a terminal date. But if President Tinubu was the friend of the masses he was trying to paint himself to be before he came to power, as president of the country, he had the power to then do a supplementary budget for subsidy payment to continue. He did not do that.
But remember, he said that the fuel subsidy over the years have only been catering to the pockets of a few Nigerians.
Yes.
So what is different about what he is doing now to make it equitably fair to everyone by removing it?
One, there's no equitable fairness in what he has done in the last 9 months. In fact, the so-called fuel subsidy resources or money they claimed that they are going to save and use in financing the funding of public education, healthcare, housing, and co. Where is it? They are not talking about it anymore. Interestingly, as soon as they removed fuel subsidy, that was the same time fees in public tertiary institutions started, going up. And then instead of the government increasing the budgetary allocation to education, it decided to float what we call the student loan, which means that students still have to pay exorbitant fee. In the healthcare sector, they are not funding it. Roads are not being built. Affordable housing is not there. So the first question is that the so-called gains of subsidy removal they are talking about does not exist. The second thing is this. Yes, we agree that the fuel subsidy payment itself is a tragedy on its own because it's an anomaly. It's not supposed to be so. A country that has crude oil ought not to be paying subsidy for its citizens to be able to benefit, from the oil resource. Why this has happened is because the ruling elite over the decades refused, to make the 4 public refineries we have in this country to function appropriately. Because if Nigeria had, refining capacity, then the whole question of subsidy payment would be out of the window. But without doing that, they had to be paying subsidy. And the subsidy payment became another opportunity for different layers of the elite to continue to steal money. Many of them, the so-called oil importers, will claim that they were importing 2-3 million liters of a refined product. But at the end of the day, what they will bring to the port, to the harbor in Lagos, is an empty ship, because most of the products have been diverted to neighboring countries. Yes, and then they will collect money for, ostensibly for delivering those fuel products in Nigeria. That is what they have been doing, round tripping and all of that. But what we have always said as socialists and activists is that you cannot say that because you want to catch thieves in your own administration, you now impose on people an hardship that they cannot bear. What you should do is to go after the thief who are stealing the oil subsidy, but most importantly, also ensure that the refining capacity of Nigeria is developed so that the whole question of subsidy itself will be out of the window. But they did not do this. Rather, what they did was to give Dangote the license to build a private refinery, and the Nigerian state also supported it with money and also helped them to guarantee loan with international banks. Something which also means that if that project fails in the coming future, there's possibility that it can bankrupt, the country. That is a conversation that we're not even having at the moment. But then what has happened now is that instead of the country developing its own infrastructure to make fuel available to its citizens, you put that responsibility to a private individual for the purpose of delivering this on the basis of profit. And what we are facing with that, the refinery has been launched since last year. No petroleum is being provided from that refinery, for the benefit of Nigerian citizens, so that at the end of the day, the country still continues to import fuel. So, really, if the ruling elite had any strategy to resolving this problem, we have to say that that strategy is bad. It has not worked.
All right, now let's talk about the food crisis now. We just read in the papers that about 60,000 metric tons of grains would be provided. Also, the Nigerian customs have also said that seized food items will also be released to Nigerians. What's your take on that? Is it not also a way of also mitigating the high cost of food, or what's your view on that?
Yes, it is.
All right.
But then, it looks like medicine after death. Because already in the middle belt and other part of the country where Nigeria's food production system is concentrated, the problem that exists there goes even beyond the question of dollar rates and the fuel price. That only added to the situation to make it much more complicated. Otherwise, even before now, what you have had in that part of the country, which has led to sharp increases in food price over the years, is insecurity. People are not able to go to their farms because they are being kidnapped or they are being killed in different parts of the country in that region. So that, and alongside that, you also have the annual flooding, something which is equally a disaster waiting to happen again. It usually happens around April or May, and then again around September, leading to farms being overrun by rainwater and flood, and of course destruction of houses and even death of many people. It happened 2 years ago, it happened last year, it's going to happen again this year, because at the end of the day, the Nigerian government has failed to do all that is needed to ensure that there are safety mechanisms provided. So at the end of the day, if you look at what has been provided in grains, it will not make more than a little impact, even if it does. Of course, I read in the papers yesterday that food prices have started dropping in Kano and maybe a few other states. But that is in the areas where food is being produced. When you then take the grains down to the southwest, where you are going to have the added cost, of transportation, which is high. The difference might not even actually be felt. So that at the end of the day, it's just trying to douse a raging fire with spit. It is not going to work. We have to demand that the government, first and foremost, will do what we call price control. Because some of these prices of food that we're also seeing is not only just about the factors that we have talked about. There's also the question of hoarding, that is taking place. And what the trade unions need to do really is to form action committees that can go around the market, working with market associations that can go, because it is not the retailers, that are the problem. Really, the retailers are simply passing over to the consumers the cost that has been foisted on them by the big wholesalers who are hoarding, who are doing right transfer, who are trying to push the price up, even when all of the factors already are there. It's like the fuel price that we're talking about. Despite all of the factors that we're talking about, all it takes for the fuel price to move, it is for a few marketers to just all the product, and that is also happening. And the government cannot be trusted to do this appropriately. Of course, they went after a mall in Abuja, but the reality is that it is their friends that are doing this. By the time you begin to look at those who are doing all of this, you are going to realize that there are people who are actually members of the ruling party, who are financing different people in power, and therefore they are untouchable. And that is why it is important that the trade union develop an independent democratic mechanism, working with the market associations to begin to enforce price control in order to ensure that at least a little of the pain, is brought down. But most importantly, what we need to do is to fight for a new way of running the country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taiwo Hassan Soweto, for giving us your perspective on this matter. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, the program continues right after this time up. Please don't go nowhere.